Hello everybody, and welcome back to my sewing room. Today is my first video about crochet, so I'm going to continue doing my Sew Your Stash series, and I'll be doing a floss tube once a month, and then I'm going to be doing a little bit of crochet now and again. And I want to start with a series called the Bee in My Bonnet Granny Square series. And today I'm going to show you how to make a granny square. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about my chunky thread. So my chunky thread has been out for a few years. This is what it looks like. It's 100% cotton. It comes on these cute little skeins. And I have 26 colors so far. I have 4 new ones coming out after the first of the year. So let me just tell you a little bit about the yarn. This is Cloud, and it is 140 yards or 126 meters, and it's a 50 gram, and the weight is like a baby yarn, maybe just a little bit thinner. It's like a number 2 here, and I love it. I wanted to do 100% cotton yarn because I wanted to do a lot of things for my kitchen, like pot holders and things like that. And if you use anything with nylon or anything like that, then or acrylic, then that will melt. And I just really love natural fibers, and I like to use those as much as I possibly can. And so that's why I came out with the 100% cotton in a thinner weight. And the reason I call it chunky thread is because you can do chunky stitching with it, like I did in my Let's Bake quilt. In my sew along, I did stitching on gingham, and so a lot of you who follow my quilting know what I'm talking about, and that's when I introduced this yarn. So it is yarn, but it's called chunky thread because you can do chunky stitching with it and you can crochet with it. And I love it because my grandma taught me to crochet when I was a little girl, and she was always making everything. She could crochet everything, but I loved to watch her crochet doilies. And I thought it would be really fun to do like chunky versions of those doilies that she did in the very fine threads. And so that's another reason why I called it the chunky thread. But it is just regular yarn. You can do anything with it. Pillows, buntings, cute flowers, afghans, whatever you do with other yarns. And so I'm super excited about it. And so let me just tell you a little bit about my skeins. This skein comes, you start taking it off on the outside of the skein instead of on the inside. It's just wrapped around on the outside. And so I can just crochet from that. I can throw it in a bowl like this. I bought this bowl, this yarn bowl, at Hobby Lobby, and then I painted it with my Farm Girl paint and just dressed it up a little bit. This is in the color Tea Kettle. And so you can either just throw that in the bowl and put it through this little winder and help you as you're crocheting along. It just kind of, you know, twirls around in there. Or another thing I do, you can see in this bowl right here, that some of these are wound on a yarn winder. This is a vintage yarn winder, and it just clips on the edge of your table, and you just wind your skein and it turns into this, which sometimes makes it easier when you put it in the bowl, and then it can really just twirl around. So you can do that. Another thing I do is, you can see my Floss Flowers here. Whenever I have leftover bits of yarn, no matter how small, I like to wind them on my Floss Flowers, because you'd be surprised how you'll use these. Like, look at this is like a 2 round granny square, and you can use even this little bit just for the center start, so I don't waste any yarn. So that's what those are. And here's some of my granny squares that I've done in different sizes. These are all scrappy. Granny squares are typically scrappy, and that's how I like to do them. This is the first thing that my grandma taught me to crochet, and I've just been in love with granny squares ever since. I haven't fallen out of love with them. There's so many things that we can, you know, do with the granny square, and so that's why I thought I would start out with the granny square series. So today I'm going to show you how to make a granny square, and then next week I'm going to show you how to use the granny square and put it into a project, and then I'll be showing, you know, 3 or 4 more projects to do with the granny square, and then I'll start probably a granny circle and do a series on those and things like that and continue on with the crochet. So I'm going to put this stuff away and only grab out what we need, and I'll talk about those then, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll be right back. Okay, let's talk about supplies. So first, what you're going to need, obviously, is yarn. So I'm going to be using 4 colors for this one, and I'm going to be using Vivid, Frosting, Denim, and Beehive. And then you'll need hooks. So for my yarn, these are the hooks that I use. I have 3 sizes in a package. These are the 100% Cute crochet hooks by Lori Holt, a Bee in My Bonnet. And yes, that's me. And so the smallest is a 3.5 millimeter or an E4 in US, a 4.0 millimeter or a G6 US. 4.5 millimeter is a 7 in US. Now, today I'm probably going to use the smallest. You could use the medium-sized one, the G, if you'd like to do it a little bit looser. And I'll show you when I use this in a different series. This size is when I use 2 skeins at the same time. So that's about the hooks. I'm going to be using, again, for this one, an E, which is a 3.5. Okay, you'll also need just some scissors that you can do some snipping with. And then when we weave in the ends, you're going to need yarn needles. And so these are the 100% Cute yarn needles. They come in a tube like this, and they're 2 3/4 inches long. They're plastic. And what you need in a yarn needle is something with a large hole in the eye and then a blunt tip, so that you don't fray your yarn when you're trying to weave in the ends. You don't want to split your yarns using a pointy needle. Okay, so I think I'm going to start right here with the Vivid, and we're going to do the first row. Okay, so what you're going to do is put it on your hook. Like, this is how I do it. There's so many different ways to do this, but I'm just going to show you how my grandma showed me. So I just wrap it around here and put the tail behind it, and then this leaves this free to wrap around the hook, pull through, and then you have your chain right there. I'm going to do it one more time just so that you can see how I do it. Let's pull that out. Okay, so here's your hook. You just wrap it around and then put the tail behind it. And then you've got your long yarn here that you wrap around your hook. And then I just grab this part so that I can pull through. And then I pull both ends. And this way you can tighten it or loosen it. I like to keep it not super tight, but not super loose, so about like that. And notice on the crochet hook where it goes bigger down here and tinier here, I like to use this as my gauge for my tension. And if you're a beginner, that's one of the hardest things, is to learn just, you know, how to do it, how to not crochet too tight or too loose, and that just comes with practice. But it comes easily if you just work at it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to chain 4. What we're going to be doing first is this little center of the granny, and it consists of 3 sets of double crochets. Now, double crochet in US terms is what I'm going to show you, but it's called a treble crochet in UK terms, just so that you know that, so that you don't get confused. But this is a double crochet, but first I'm going to show you how to do a chain. So all you're going to do is wrap your needle and go 1, that's a chain. Wrap your yarn around your hook, there's 2. Wrap your yarn around your hook, there's 3 chain. Wrap your yarn around your hook, and there's 4 chain. And that's what I like to start out with. You could do 5 if you wanted. Your hole would just be a little bit bigger in the center. And then I simply take my hook and go through my first chain. Grab my yarn, bring it back through, and then I want to slip stitch through that first chain so that I have formed a ring. Now it's a real tiny ring, so when you finish that part, you kind of want to pull it out to where you can see that hole, because that's what you're going to crochet into. This is the most fiddly part about starting out your granny square. Once you get this started and you have something to hang on to, then you'll be good to go. So the first thing we're going to do is chain 2. 1, 2. Now this is a stand-in for a double crochet. So all I do is 2, and now I'm going to show you how to do the actual double crochet stitch. So what you're going to do first, anytime you do a double crochet, is you're going to wrap around your hook once. You're going to go into the hole, come back up, grab your yarn. Now you've got 3 loops on your hook. You're going to wrap around again, take your hook and go through the first 2, wrap around again and go through the second 2. That's a double crochet. Now you're going to get plenty of time looking at me doing a double crochet, because that's what this granny squares consist of, is a double crochet and chains in the corners. So now I have 2 double crochet. I have the stand-in and then the actual double crochet. So I'm going to do the next double crochet because I need a set of 3. Wrap around, go in the hole, grab my yarn, pull it up till I have 3 on the hook, wrap around again, go through the first 2, and then go through the last 2. That's your double crochet. Now when I'm holding my thread, I like to wrap it around my finger, but a lot of people do it different ways. You'll get to where you know how to hold your thread and what's most comfortable for you. After my first set, I need to form my corner. Underneath this blue yarn, the red yarn, there's a chain 2. So that's what we're going to do right now. 1 and 2. That's our corner. Now we're going to kind of turn around here and do 3 double crochets. So here we go. 1, 2, 1 more, now we have our second set. We've got 3 here, 2 chain and 3 double crochet. Now we have to chain 2 again to form that corner. And I'm just turning it so that my work is always at the top here. So here we go with the next set of double crochets. There's the first one. Here's the second one. And here's the third one. Now I'm trying to go really slow here, but if you need to watch it slower at any point, you can always watch it in slow motion on the video. You can hit that slow motion. Okay, so then I've chained 2, and now I've got a set of 3, and I need to do my 4th set. So there's 1, a little tug on my yarn. There's 2, and there's 3. Now I've got my first 4 sets here, but I need to form my corner, so I need to chain 2. And then here's my first chain right here. When I chained, these are the 2 stand-in double crochet. I like to call them the stunt doubles. So here's number 1. What I want to do is join into this second one. So I just take my hook. I like to use my hook part to get the first part in. Now you can see that I'm going right into that chain, and I'm just going to slip stitch, meaning I'm going to grab my yarn, come through that, and then just go through that again. So there I have my first set. Now it's time for me to change colors. So I'm going to teach you how my grandma always taught me. So I just pull this loop up by about that big, and then I just cut off the yarn, and then I pull my yarn through that loop, and I just pull down like this to tighten that up. Now on this tail, you can see, because I kept it around that circle as I was crocheting in, I don't have to weave that in, that's already hidden. So I'm just going to grab my scissors and clip that off. And I'm not going to worry about weaving this in yet. I'm going to weave that in after I've done the first 4 rows, after I finish that granny. So there's my first color. Now I'm going to grab frosting and do the second round. I wanted to show you, I forgot, I noticed when this was in here, that sometimes when I wind my yarn on the winder, sometimes I'll just roll up the label and put in the center. That way you can always know what the information and what color you have. Okay, so let's add the second row. And I'm just going to put that on my hook the same way. And what we're going to be doing is 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and 3 double crochets in each corner of this first. So in these holes right here, these 4 holes, we're going to do those sets of double crochets with the chain 2 in between. So I like to join, not where I ended, but maybe opposite or the next one. You always start in a corner. So I'm just joining with a slip stitch, and this is how I do it again. Let me show you. So you go into the hole, grab the yarn, and then just pull it through. So now I'm starting my new color. So once again, I need to chain 2 for my little stunt double there. And I kind of push it over so that I have room to crochet. And I'm going to do a double crochet. So that makes 2. Whoops. My 3rd double crochet, and now I need to chain 2 to form that corner for the next round. And again, just kind of push it over a little bit. I'm going to do another set of double crochets. There's 2. Now, this might be a little hard to explain, but I'm going to try. So when I crochet, I try not to do this where I'm working real close. I try to pull my yarn up tall so that it ends up even at the top. So all my chains at the top are not my chains, excuse me, the tops of my double crochets are nice and even. So now I've got my 2 sets of 3 with the chain in between, and I'm going to do the exact same thing in the next corner. I'm not going to chain to go into the next corner or anything. I'm just going to go right into a double crochet. One, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, there's 2, got a little ahead of myself, 3, so you can see that forming. Okay, so now we're going to do the next corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, and again, you can push these over a little bit because I like these to line up single file. I don't like to layer on top of each other here. Okay, there's the third one. Now we're going to go into our last one. 1, there's 1, 2, 3, chain 2, whoops, okay, here's our last set of double crochets for the second round of this cute little granny. Okay, so now we're just going to join this again. Here's the first chain, and here's the first chain. You can see here's the second chain. So I'm just going to take my hook and go in to the first side of it and then flip it around. And on this hook, there's kind of a little pointy there, and that helps get in there. Oh, now I just pulled it out. Try this one more time. Okay, there we go. And then just do that slip stitch. Pull the loop up. Clip that off. Okay, so this is what my round 2 looks like. Now on this one, you can see that this is squared. That's because I blocked it, and I'll be showing you at the end how I block my granny squares. But this is what it looks like, and just kind of, after each round, I like to kind of pull it and shape it. Now, at this point, you might want to do your ends, but I'm just, like I say, I'm just going to show you at the end. So, okay, let's move on to round 3. Here's one right here that has 3 rounds. And I'm going to be using denim for this one. And I'm going to start in a corner, any corner, just not the one that I finished in. Okay, I'm going to join my colors. I'm going to do the stunt double there, then do my second double crochet, my third double crochet, chain 2, push these over. Now I'm just going to be doing this third round the exact same way in the corners, and then there's one additional set of 3 double crochets, and that is right here, this hole that is formed. So now you just go ahead, no chaining in between, and just do one set of 3 double crochets in there and do the corner. Now once you get these granny squares down, they're really relaxing. They're very fast to do. Your speed just picks up, just like I say, with just experience and time. And a lot of you out there who already know how to make granny squares, you can attest to that, how fun they are, how timeless they are. They're just so many possibilities, and I just love them. So I hope you will love this series just as much as I do. And we're going to be doing some fun little things. Okay, so now it's time for the next set of 3. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue forming the corners and doing the sets of 3s in this hole, and I'm just going to speed it up a little bit so that this video isn't super duper long, and I'll meet you at the end of this round. Okay, so now all I have to do is join again. Here's my first chain, here's my second chain. See if we can get this one in just a little bit easier. There we go. I'm just going to slip stitch by pulling those through and pulling up a loop. Clipping that off. Okay, so there's 3 rounds in a granny square. Okay, so this is 4th. And so I'm going to add 1 more round. This is what the 4th round looks like. We're just going to be doing the corners exactly the same. We just have another hole to add 2 more clusters. And that's the granny square. And you can just keep going for as long as you want to make it as big as you want. So let me hurry and do this 4th round, and I'll meet you back at the end. Okay, so I've just finished that 4th round, and that's how big I'm going to make this granny square for this video's sake. But you can see how wonky they are, you know, they're kind of stretched out of shape, and that's why I like to block. But let me first show you how I weave in the ends. So what I do is I grab a needle, and I start from the outside in, like the last color that I used. So here are my 2 yellow pieces right here. And I'll pull my ends up and clip them about the same length. And here's why. Because what I like to do is I want to hide my yellow ones behind my yellow. This is the back, and that's where I want to hide them. So I first just take my needle and I thread through the lower part of those clusters, and see, you can't see that in the front. I thread my needle first, and then I have these 2 ends that I just feed through that big eye. That's why I like a larger eye, and I just pull those through, and I kind of pull that up so it doesn't lose its shape. And now I want to go back through, and I skip over a thread or 2. I don't want to go back where I just came out of. I'll just undo my stitch. but I'll skip over a thread or two and go back again and pull through. And I'll do that at least twice, and I think that's fine for that. Then I'll just take my needle out, grab my scissors, and just clip them off close there. And that's how that looks from the front, and that's how it looks at the back. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do the denim. So this is what a lot of people, when you're beginning, you have a hard time telling what the back looks like from the front. This is the back, and this is the front of a granny square. And the best way I can explain it is the back looks kind of flat, like your work looks kind of flat. The front has a little bit more texture. You can see where all those stitches are. So you can go ahead and make a granny square as big or as little as you want according to the project. I'm just going to show you all these little sizes of granny squares that I did, just so that you can see. There's a 2 round. I think the quilter in me really likes the scrappy look of granny squares too. So I grew up in a family where one grandma quilted and one grandma crocheted. And so isn't it fun to do all these little scrappy colors? Now this one, I used the same 4 colors and then just repeated it. So let me talk about blocking, and let me show you just a little preview of what we're going to do next week. And so let me grab my blocking stuff and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back with my blocking board. This is the blocking board for crocheting and knitting. You could use it for knitting, but I just wanted to show you that one side has a grid of 14 inches and there's a flower right here in the center so that you can start from the center out on larger projects. On the other side, there's a 14-inch circle so that you can do doilies and granny circles and all that stuff. But I'm just going to talk about the square today. So let me show you what I did for the project for next week. I did a 16 round granny square, and it's already on here blocked. So what I do are, these are my blocking pins. Okay, they're rust proof, nickel coated brass, so they will not rust, because that's important, because you need to use pins that won't rust, because you'll need to get this wet. So what you do, what the blocking is for, is just to make it all the same size and just to kind of make it how the stitches were supposed to be even. Sometimes, you know, crocheting is by hand, and so sometimes depending on the day we crochet looser or tighter, and this, by blocking, it kind of takes care of that process. So again, here's a 4 round granny, blocked and unblocked. Okay, so what I do is I first find that flower center and I poke a pin in, and you could like put them in a pin cushion, keep them in this little container. I also, I didn't bring that here to show you, but when you get the blocking board, this is solid and it pops out. You could keep your pins on that thing too and just keep it separate. I've done that before. So I just start like that, and I will put a pin, because this is 12 inches. I put a pin in every, not in the yarn, but just in the hole. You see what I mean by that? See, they're just in the hole there. And then I'll do it like in increments. This is like 1 inch apart on the corners here, just to kind of make sure everything's going straight like this. sometimes when you're doing granny squares, because you're going around and around in rows, your square in the center can go a little bit ski-wampus. So that's what this is for. Now, I haven't sprayed this yet. This is before I blocked it. So I just wanted to show you how I set it up. And I also, on another board, you know, you can do all of these at the same time. You don't have to just do one at a time, however many you can fit on a board. And I'll show you a little video at the end of what it looks like when I had all of these on the same board. So I just stick the pins in. Now you can either use a steamer, that's not gonna bother it, or just a regular spray bottle with just water, no starch, no anything. I want it to be nice and soft. Now, I just saturate it, like I'll do it, spray it over the tub, go out in the backyard, or, you know, over the kitchen, you know, in my I have a farm sink in my kitchen, so that works well. And I just saturate it at night and leave it in the sink or put it in the bathtub or whatever to dry, and in the morning it's always dry. And I love how you can't really see that in the video, but it kind of fuzzes up the cotton. I shouldn't say fuzz because it doesn't make it fuzzy, but it just kind of makes it a little bit softer after it's got wet and dried a little bit. And then because it's 100% cotton, it will shrink a little bit, but only to the point of the pins where you put it in. So that's why it ends up being the same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of project next week. And I've got this cute little 12-inch pillow form. And so that's why I crocheted 16 rounds, because what I did is I just grabbed my pillow form and just kept crocheting rounds, and then I just put it on there and measure it to see about what size it fit. And so I'll talk all about that next week and show you how to make this granny square into a pillow. And thanks for joining me. I hope you're going to enjoy this series of the Bee in My Bonnet, or BIMB, Granny Square Along. And I'll chat with you next week.